Good morning and welcome to the January 16th Victim Compensation Board meeting. For those of you in the room that are appearing on a specific agenda item or wish to offer public comment, the microphones at the podium and tables are directional and require that you hold them fairly close to your mouth when speaking to ensure your testimony is captured by our audio equipment. For members and participants who are appearing via Zoom, if you cannot hear the presenter, please use the comment feature to note that as staff are monitoring the comments in real time. Council, please call the roll.
Member Becton. You're muted, Member.
Present.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Member Johnson.
Here.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Thank you. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes for the November 21st, 24 board meeting.
Thank you. Are there any discussion, additions or corrections to the minutes from board members?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve item 1?
Move to approve.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom?
Seeing none, council, please call the roll.
The motion for consideration is approval of the minutes from the November 21st, 2024 board meeting. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As any items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take any action on these matters at this meeting. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding item 5, there will be a separate call for public comment when the item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this meeting, we will be calling on you by name or phone number. For those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it is your turn to speak.
I see Ms. Bustos's hand went up first. Ms. Bustos?
Hi, good morning. My name is Paloma Bustos, and I'm with the Sunita Jain Anti-Trafficking Initiative, a program based out of Loyola Law School here in Los Angeles. Is it time for me to make a public comment? I just joined, I'm sorry.
Yes, please. If you have a public comment on an item not on the agenda, this is the time for that.
Okay, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that this is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And last September, we met with CalBCP to provide recommendations on how their information and process could be improved to make benefits for human trafficking survivors more accessible. Specifically, we discussed expanding outreach and training with the focus on the income loss benefits available to survivors of human trafficking. We also emphasize the importance of expanding access to the online application for service providers from community-based organizations, allowing them to assist survivors in applying and increasing the number of survivors who can access this benefit. And I was pleased to see from CalBCP's recent communication that they sent out last week that they've already started implementing some of these changes, such as improving their webpage on recovery for lost income and hosting webinars on benefits available to human trafficking survivors. Much of this feedback, just so you know, comes directly from survivors and service providers who have engaged with the program. And so we hope that CalBCP will continue prioritizing survivors' need to further enhance these critical benefits to survivors of human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bustos, and thank you also for taking the time to offer your comments to staff on this incredibly important issue. I see Mr. Tenoyan.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning and Happy New Year to the board, to the executive leadership, and everyone connected today in support of crime victims. This is Hovhannes Tenoyan. I'm a Burbank resident. With great heartbreak, I share my concerns today after these recent wildfire events in Southern California and the devastation of communities throughout, many which are near and dear to Burbank and the Los Angeles region. I want to just give a heads up that we've seen many shortcomings in so many areas, including political leadership, whether it's the cities, the counties, or even the state. And I know there's a lot being done, but I think there can be more done. And whether victimization occurs through person-to-person incidents or localized community incidents or large-scale natural disasters that might not have that criminal or person element, communities are still left vulnerable to acts of crime and further injustices. And I definitely want to just hope that the board and staff do a lookout on events in Los Angeles, do outreach to local law enforcement that are also already being stretched very thin, and see what kind of help can be provided. A lot of people are not insured. A lot of people are being victimized, whether it's physical assaults or looting or burglary. A lot of this is just kind of compounding the victimization and trauma that's occurring. And even for myself, as someone who suffered a crime many, many years ago with my grandparents in my local neighborhood that had to do with fire, these recent events have been quite unsettling. So please, I definitely want to encourage as much outreach as possible, as much compassion as possible. I know that we might not have that on our agenda today, but given these emergency circumstances, I think it would warrant even just a cursory comment or even an expanded discussion if possible. So thank you so much to everybody. Please stay safe, whether you're in LA or in any other part of the state. And I just hope that the good progress continues, and I look forward to seeing what the new year has in store for us.
Thank you, Mr. Tsnoyan. Ms. Petros. Ms. Petros, did you have a comment? Maybe we can come back to Ms. Petros. Ms. Taylor?
Good morning to the board. My name is Michelle Taylor, and I am a resident of Contra Costa County. I just want to speak on my experience again with this program. November 2022, I applied to the program. In April 2023, my application was denied. I immediately appealed the denial. Last week, January 8th, I had an in-person hearing for that denial. I followed Cal VCB's written steps in order to prepare for the hearing. And so what I did to prepare for the hearing was I reviewed the information provided provided on the issues that were on appeal based on the hearing officer's recommendation letter. I gathered additional information for the hearing officer that supported my appeal. I was ready to discuss why I thought the original recommendation on my application should change. I brought additional documents and supporting information. And I also allowed the 60 minutes of uninterrupted time. My hearing lasted a little over 2 hours. I am grateful to the Cal VCB staff for allowing me that time. At the hearing, I did not expect to be questioned about specific statements that were said to me by the suspect 4 years ago. I did not expect to be asked on more than one occasion what I found threatening about stalking acts done to me. Seems to me that these type of questions by a hearing officer should have been asked back in 2022 when I applied to the program. Especially knowing that the hearing officer mentioned during my time that just on my application alone, prior to that hearing, there were over 661 pages of documentary evidence on the record for my application. So my hope is that any victim who applies to this program has an advocate or an attorney to assist them in navigating the program, because it is certainly needed despite the seemingly straightforward application process. There's a great deal of information that needs to be shared with applications early on. And that information is unfortunately not available anywhere on the website today. So I just want to avail myself to any victim who has a pending or denied application, who might need support navigating the process. Please feel free to reach out to me. Once again, my name is Michelle Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor, for sharing your experience and for your very generous offer just now. Ms. Petros, I saw you had some trouble unmuting. Are you able to unmute now? Well, if you'd like to put something in the chat, we can come back to it, or you're also obviously always welcome to reach out to staff with any concerns.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Is it possible for, oh, I see she's left the meeting, but it might be also possible for Ms. Petros to call in.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Oh, she's back in. Okay. Ms. Petros, are you able to unmute? If not, council suggested you might want to call in with a comment. Yes.
Could we reopen a
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I'm sure she has the opportunity.
Of course. Okay, well, we'll move on to item 3 then, and then if Ms. Petros is able to rejoin and offer comment, then we will hear that at the time.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the Executive Officer Statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Good morning, Board. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year. I do know that the fires have had a significant impact on those in Los Angeles, and we're working with our DevOps colleagues to make sure that there's anything that we can do to help. We certainly will. So as you know, the governor's budget was released earlier this month. As far as how VCB is concerned, good news is that there are no additional across-the-board cuts to state programs. And also we received our first estimate for the Proposition 47 savings, which is critically important to our trauma recovery centers. The estimate from the Department of Finance is $88.3 million in Prop 47 savings. As you may recall, Cal VCB receives 10%, so that's $8.83 million. That is about a $600,000 decrease compared to last year. But not as significant as we had feared. We do think that number will go down as the implementation of Prop 36 takes effect. Right now, we do consider, though, that it's likely that we will have to reduce the number of trauma recovery centers that the board approves this year. We are accepting applications through Friday, January 24th at 2 p.m. The notice of funds available was posted on December 4th. We held a webinar for interested parties on December 13th. We accepted questions through January 3rd and posted the answers on January 10th. We did receive multiple questions and we answered all of those. The board, again, will see those recommendations in March. And we look forward to having the conversation then about how we can fund the trauma recovery centers, depending on how many applications we receive. As I think the board is aware, the Forced and Involuntary Sterilization Compensation Program, last September, AB 179 was signed, which allowed those who had been denied a request for an additional review. The deadline for that submission was January 1st. We received 45 requests for additional review. To date, 8 individuals have been approved for compensation under that extra review. They received their $35,000 within 60 days. The other requests we continue to go through them, and we'll give you a final number when we have that. I also just wanted to provide an update on the federal Victims of Crime Act regulations that we discussed previously. As you know, the federal government had proposed promulgated regulations. We had submitted comments, but just a couple weeks ago, they officially withdrew those regulations due to the lack of time left within the Biden administration. So we continue to operate under the current VOCA regs, and we'll keep you all posted if there's any changes. I'd like to now turn to a PowerPoint that we've put together. So if we can go to the second slide, I'm very excited to say that we are kicking off our 60th anniversary. Next slide, please. Our 60th anniversary of CalVCB. As you probably know, because we talked about it a lot, CalVCB was the very first state compensation program in the nation. The federal statutes and many other states are modeled after the California program. And of course, things have changed quite a bit in the time that we've been around. We've gone from 3 to 250 team members. Our compensation limit has grown from 5,000 to 70,000, and victims now have 7 years to file a claim. So we're very excited about the number of people we've served over the past 60 years and look forward to many, many more. If we could go to the next slide. Our team has put together a little video to commemorate this, so I'd like to share it with all of you now.
The California Victim Compensation Board is proud to celebrate 60 years of serving victims of crime. It all started in July 1965, when California became the first state in the nation to provide compensation to victims of violent crime. Starting with a staff of just 3 team members, CalVCB awarded $194,000 over their first 4 years. Since then, support for crime victims has grown as the nation saw an increase in awareness, funding, and protections for victims and survivors. With the help of local, state, and federal partners and new legislation, CalVCB has been able to assist more victims. Today, CalVCB is a team of 250 employees and a network of local government partners that support victims. Over the past 60 years, more than 1.5 million applications have been approved and $2.7 billion in compensation has been issued. The original 1965 program compensation limit of $5,000 has increased to $70,000 today, as California continues to prioritize the need for victims to be able to rebuild their lives. Over the years, changes in laws have also allowed CalVCB to cover more benefits and support additional victims of crime. For example, in 1993, family members of victims were made eligible to receive compensation. In the wake of the September 11th terrorist attacks, changes allowed CalVCB to cover family members impacted by that tragedy. Additionally, accessing the program has been made easier by extending the application filing period from 1 year to 7 years. CalVCB also compensates those who are erroneously convicted of crimes, grants funding to trauma recovery centers, and administered California's forced or involuntary sterilization compensation program.
Over the past 60 years, CalVCB has helped 1.5 million victims rebuild their lives through compensation. As executive officer, I am proud of our legacy and the work that we do. Every day, our focus is on improving the support we provide in order to better the lives of victims across California. So I will also say that we plan on, of course, using parts of this throughout the year, and we have an in-person all-staff meeting next week where we will also be playing this video and showcasing the work that we've done over the past 60 years.
California Victim Compensation.
Oops, we're gonna, okay, move to the next slide. So it's also an appropriate time to share with the board that we are kicking off a new strategic plan. As you know, most state government entities have a strategic plan that guides their overarching work. And we completed the previous one. I'm very proud to say that even with the pandemic and other things, we achieved many of the goals in that previous strategic plan, and now we look forward. So next slide. Our mission, vision, and values have not changed. We are an organization that is committed to the work that we do. We have a very specific focus, and we continue to follow those guidelines. Next slide. I do want to note that as we created the strategic plan, we sent a survey to over 3,400 providers and community organizations and stakeholders to gather input. And that went into these goals and objectives. So goal 1, to promote access and equity. And there are specific ways that we really want to do that. Especially important in our mind is identifying language access and how we can better serve those who need assistance in other languages besides English. Next slide. As we look to improving the CalVCB experience, again, how can we use technology to enhance service delivery and modernize our technology to make sure that we are providing as seamless an experience as possible? Next slide. And of course, we want to have a strong workforce. We have very proud of the team that we have here. We want to continue to make sure that we have the appropriate staffing levels to meet the work of that we do and to help the victims as quickly as possible. Next slide. So finally, as was mentioned earlier, January is Human Trafficking Prevention Month. CalVCB has done a lot of work in this area. We have specific webinars today and next week around human trafficking prevention applications. We have a toolkit. I believe if you scan that QR code, that's what pops up that can be shared on social media. And, California accounted for about 12% of all cases in the US of human trafficking in 2023. So we know that this is an area that we can have a large impact. The funding that is available, income loss funding that's available to human trafficking victims, we know makes a significant difference in their ability to restore their lives. And so we've done a lot of work this month on that and wanted to share that with everyone. And we can stop the slide deck and that I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Officer Gledhill, and congratulations to you and all the staff on 60 years. It was not surprising given the budget crunch we're in about the TRCs, but it's unfortunate. And we'll just have to do the best we can in being fair and making those awards. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Yes, Ms. Becton.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on 60 years. That's quite an accomplishment. So that was good to hear. I really appreciated the strategic planning goals and objectives, especially the one around enhancing the experience for the users with the use of technology. So I think that's going to be a real benefit to the public. So thank you for that. And then finally, I wasn't able to hear what is driving the cuts to the TRCs. If you don't mind repeating that, I would appreciate it. And thank you.
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to. So our TRCs are funded through three buckets of money. So it's the $2 million in the restitution fund, that is consistent every year. And then it's the savings from Prop 47. And that comes out of a Department of Finance estimate that we receive every year. As you may recall, Member Becton, it gets updated in May, and we usually adjust the TRC numbers based on that. But we do have the January estimate, and that number is about $600,000 lower than it was last year. And so we do expect that number, that will be the number that will base what we can award off of. As you recall, we also are in the last year of some general fund money that was provided to the Trauma Recovery Center programs. We're going to be working with the Department of Finance to make sure we are able to spend that money this year. We should have that information for you, hopefully before the March board meeting, so that we can again base our estimates on that. I would note that this is the last year of that funding, so that general fund money, unless it's renewed in some way through the legislative process, will not be available next year. But so this year we should still hopefully have the general fund money, the Prop 47 money, and the $2 million restitution dollars. So it's really the fluctuation in the Prop 47 money that's affecting the number of trauma recovery centers that we'll be able to fund.
I'll echo sentiments from Member Becton that congratulations on 60 years, and also it's a testament to California. We have been historically and remain leaders on so many things, and this is a good one to point out, right? That we are supportive of victims of crime, and I think that's your stewardship through the current program is really meaningful. So thank you for all your work. I really appreciate you and the whole team. To the question of TRCs, SCO, the Controller's Office, is no stranger to running programs that have unstable funding sources, and it's a challenge. And I would only encourage you to do whatever you can to provide whatever stability you can through VCB's processes for the applicants for those funds. Right? Obviously, there's little you can do to manage what money comes in the door, other than advocacy. But there are things that can be done in terms of the way the money gets allocated to provide some stability. And I just encourage you to view your processes with that lens to the extent possible. And then I just did have a question. Congratulations on the strategic plan as well. I really appreciate the outreach you did to get this to where it is. One of the things that stood out to me in reviewing the language in the plan is just that there's obviously a challenge ahead for VCB in terms of meeting the needs of applicants in a timely fashion, making sure there's a quick turnaround on appeals, et cetera, especially with the new processes. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But just wondering if you have any insight into how VCB plans to sort of manage around workforce and workload as it increases in the application review and appeals process.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think as everyone knows, it's always a balance, right, between the funding that's available, the staffing that's available, and the goals and the desire to, as Member Becton pointed out, improve technology, and those things all cost money. So this allows us to have a blueprint, and then as we sit down every year and every fiscal year to look at our goals, we worked with the board and the administration to make a case for potentially additional funding, additional staffing in order to improve these services. At the same time, we do what we can internally, right, to improve our processes and to have staff do the best work that they can. Perhaps there are ways that we can, help staff, move staff around, whatever we need to do internally. So we continue to make those efforts, but it is a process, and it is obviously something that as we move forward, we know we will need additional resources to fulfill a lot of these goals.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I would just, only, elevate that this is going to be, and we're all aware this is going to be a concern for Cal VCB moving ahead, just especially with the changes in the appeals process. And so, to the extent that you can make that case, right, that whatever resources, identify the needed resources and make the case for them. That'll be helpful. I know that it's always been a sort of a pride of VCB to try and meet the timelines and meet the expectations of applicants, and we want to make sure that remains moving ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I should say that the governor's budget does include a handful of new staff to help manage that appeals process. As you all know, that means we'll go through the process and hope that they're still there in July when we can hire them. But we recognize that will be, well into this process as we're working. So we're continuing to do everything we can to kind of shore up and work within the new rules. And we'll continue to obviously inform the board and the administration on how that work's going.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to item 4, which is the contract update, and it will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Sean Ramirez.
Good morning, board members. Can you hear me okay? Today's contract report has one item, which is operational. It is an informational item, which does not require board action, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Ramirez. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is the request for authority to begin the rulemaking process for amendments to the California Code of Regulations, Title II, Section 615 et seq., which will be presented by Attorney Janine Carlberg.
Good morning, board members and chair. Okay, thank you. A little short, all right. Thank you very much. Good morning, members and chair. My name is Janine Carlberg. I'm a senior attorney in the legal department at California Victim Compensation Board, and I'm here to discuss board agenda item number 5, which seeks authorization to begin the rulemaking process for proposed amendments to the regulations noted in your board materials. There are a total of 26 regulations that are impacted by these proposed changes, which can be basically grouped into 2 categories. The first are regulations impacting hearing procedures. Thank you. And the second are regulations impacting the substance of 649 series, which govern the victim compensation program. I'll try and summarize the most important topics and reasons for the proposed changes by addressing each of these categories in turn. First, with respect to the hearing procedures, CalVCB currently has 3 different articles that address hearing procedures. One applies to all hearings, one applies only to victim compensation hearings and Good Samaritan hearings, and one applies to claims by wrongfully convicted felons under Penal Code Section 4900. Focusing on the first provisions that apply to all hearings, the existing regulations are confusing and unclear as to applicability. While these general hearing procedures, within these general hearing procedures, there are regulations that are specific only to particular types of hearings, but that is not made clear in the regulations. For example, Regulation 617.1 is entitled Public Hearing, but it does not specifically state that it only applies to California Penal Code 4900 hearings rather than victim compensation hearings. My apologies. Rather, hearings under California Victim Compensation Program are exempted from public hearings elsewhere in the regulations in an entirely different article. CalVCB does not hold public hearings for victims of crime because doing so would result in disclosure of private information and likely re-traumatize the victims in a public forum. Nonetheless, the placement and organization of the general hearing provisions has led to confusion by the public, applicants, and representatives alike. Amending these regulations is necessary to clarify which sections apply to which type of hearings. We also have hearing procedures that apply to only victim compensation hearings, and changes to these regulations are necessary because on August 5th, 2024, Alameda County Superior Court Judge Frank Rausch invalidated Regulation 647.21.1 in the court case of Mothers Against Murder versus California Victim Compensation Board. Judge Rausch's order directs CalVCB to remove the offending regulation from the regulatory scheme. The regulation at issue 647.20.1 provided California Victim Compensation Board a means to conduct an informal hearing based on documentary evidence alone at the hearing officer's discretion. That means an oral hearing may or may not have been offered to applicants. The ruling presented CalVCB an opportunity to review all of its hearing procedures and revise out-of-date regulations as well. So it is important to note that as a result of the court's order, CalVCB immediately changed its practices and stopped conducting hearings based on the written record without first offering oral hearings to applicants facing a potential denial. Again, in all situations where there is a staff recommendation of denial of eligibility or reimbursement, a hearing is now offered to all applicants. In addition, all applicants excuse me. In addition, all applicants who received a denial recommendation prior to the ruling that had not been acted upon by the board were also sent notices of their right to request a hearing and had their cases reviewed anew. These proposed changes not only comply with the court order, but ensure that all applicants and their representatives have the opportunity to be heard and have their statements considered before a decision is made by the board. However, these changes are not yet set forth in our regulations. As such, it's necessary to make substantial changes to the regulatory scheme outlining hearings to accurately reflect the procedures that are now in place. To make the proposed changes, staff extensively reviewed all of the briefing, documents, declarations, evidence, statements, oral arguments, and other evidence submitted by Mothers Against Murder in the aforementioned court case. Staff also conferred at length with subject matter experts within CalVCB, and the proposed regulations were further shared with CalVCB's government agency partners, the 58 county victim witness advocate offices for review and comment. The result of these efforts are the procedures that are before you today. There are also changes proposed to the substantive regulations in the 649 series that relate to the processing of claims under the victim compensation programs. There are 6 regulations to be changed in this section. One of the most significant proposed changes is to section 649.32. Section 649.32 rewrites the existing verification of income and support loss. The revisions significantly expand the availability of income and support loss benefits to applicants. For example, the proposed revision recognizes new categories of individuals who may be eligible for income or support loss, such as individuals with documented job offers and gig economy workers. The revisions are also intended to address several shortcomings in the existing regulation. The existing regulation fails to concisely state the process applicants must follow to obtain income support or support loss. It does not clearly specify the requirements necessary to establish eligibility. The public is confused about what information is required because there are multiple references to different requirements that span several different regulations. This has resulted in applicants having claims recommended for denial for one reason, and when that issue is cured, another issue is raised. The proposed revision sets forth all the requirements to obtain income and support loss in one place. Additionally, the revisions substantially liberalize the evidence which may be used to establish eligibility for income and support loss. For example, when an applicant affirmatively requests reimbursement of income loss, CalVCB must only receive a disability statement and some form of reliable evidence of income loss, whether it be itemized wage statements, payroll records, or direct deposit banking information. Once the process of requesting income and support loss is initiated, the burden then shifts to CalVCB to verify the information. CalVCB's verification process has also been substantially revised. With respect to employed individuals, staff may now verify employment in one of 3 ways. Staff may obtain tax returns, EDD records, or verification from the employer. This is a significant departure from the existing regulation that mandates CalVCB obtain tax returns from Franchise Tax Board. The existing requirement has resulted in non-California residents who never filed tax returns in the state of California being denied income loss. Additionally, those individuals who only recently began working also don't have tax returns that reflect their income, and they've been denied income loss. The regulations must be changed to avoid these unintended outcomes. With respect to verifying income of self-employed individuals, the proposed regulation still requires staff to rely on tax returns. This is the current existing requirement. While staff, subject matter experts, and consultants diligently considered other ways to verify self-employment income, in the end, no one was able to propose a better solution. This includes government operations and the Franchise Tax Board themselves. Nevertheless, the proposed revisions do alleviate the requirement that tax returns may only be provided to the board by FTB. The revisions allow for the submission of tax returns from other jurisdictions and provides for verification through other sources as well, such as tax preparers, accountants, or cross-reference to matching tax refunds. The remaining regulations in this category are intended to address gaps in the existing regulations, correct conflicts between the regulations and the governing statutes, and provide alternate ways to prove victimization in human trafficking situations. In conclusion, staff respectfully requests the authority to begin the rulemaking process. After publication in the Notice Register, this would open the 45-day public comment period. Cal VCB will share the opening of the public comment period with all interested stakeholders, which in the past have numbered in the hundreds. This will allow the public to review the proposed regulations, provide feedback and suggested comments in writing, and to request a hearing to offer further comment. Staff looks forward to considering all comments and feedbacks on these proposed regulations. Following the comment period, staff will return to the board with an update regarding the process and note any changes made to the regulations after receiving input from the public. This concludes my statement. If anybody has any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Council, and thank you for all the work that you've put into these draft regulations. In addition to complying with the court order and correcting some outdated things and simplifying things for our constituents, which is excellent. I was particularly pleased to see the changes to the income verification regs. I think as a board, we've struggled in a number of cases where cases like what you described, where for good reasons, people did not have the required documentation in the regulations, and we weren't able to compensate them for that reason. So that we're liberalizing that, I think, is a really positive step. Is there discussion regarding these regulations from the board?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, Member Johnson.
I just want to echo your sentiment that you know, the element of amending what can be, or liberalizing, I think is the term used, and I support that language. Liberalizing the documentation for income support loss, I think, is really critical. And as Chair said, we've grappled with this often, and glad to see a real stab at trying to fix that and open it up. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I also just want to echo the Chair that this is, I've said this before in reg packages, but this is always a difficult undertaking. It's a lot of work, and it's also a lot of work for the advocates who will come and speak on their own behalf or on their constituents' behalves, and appreciate their time as you open up this process to sort of make comment and follow the process and be engaged. So thanks to everyone, really.
Thank you for the comments.
And I would just echo the comments of, thank you, Chair. I would just echo the comments of my colleagues. I mean, this is a really significant undertaking, but as you've already noted, there are a number of changes, not only those to bring us in compliance with law, but also to actually make the process more fair and equitable. And again, echoing my colleagues, thank you so much to the public who will take the time to go through these documents. It is a laborious undertaking, and so we appreciate the time and the comments that will come forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve item 5?
I'll move to approve.
I will second.
Is there any public comment on this item here in Sacramento or via Zoom?
Ms. Petros, you might want to try dialing in, if you can dial in from the phone. But in the meantime, Mr. Tenoyan has his hand up. Mr. Tenoyan.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to share my comments. I just wanted to support the direction that these reforms of these regulations are going. But I definitely want to add a little bit more to the plate if possible, just for some consideration. And I'll point out the regulations that I think would be good to expand or liberalize in the same spirit. Regulation 647.32 on the topic of burden of proof. Regulation 649.27 on the topic of third-party verification. 649.40, the topic of examples of threats of physical injury. 649.41, acts constituting one qualifying crime. And 649.44, evidence of domestic violence qualifying crime. All of these regulations are in the same universe of expanding the access of crime victim compensation to victims on the standard of ponderance of evidence, expanding the different areas and providers and verifiers involved, the different stakeholders, and giving different kind of victims the opportunity to have their claims approved whenever their lives are threatened or whenever there's been some sort of threat of physical injury. Especially domestic violence as well. I think if we expand the definitions to include more categories of victims rather than just partners or romantic partners, I think that's going to be going in the same direction of these regulations to modernize and make sure that more populations are able to be served. So thank you for hearing me out, and I look forward to seeing how the discussion goes.
Thanks very much for your comments, Mr. Tenoyan. Yes.
Chair, can you? Sorry. Can you just repeat the first two code sections you referenced?
Yeah, I want to point out for it's section 647.32 and 649.27.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Petros, are you able to join via audio now? Unmute. Oh, yes, we can hear you. Great.
Thank you so much. Finally, it worked. I tried to call and the code did not work. And now my battery is really low, so I'm really sorry. I will be writing to you. I apologize, and I thank you for trying with me. You have a great day. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Ms. Petros. And if you do have additional comments, you can feel free to send those to us.
Thank you. I will.
Okay. Council, will you please call the roll?
The pending motion is authorization for the executive officer to begin the rulemaking process for amendments to the California Code of Regulations, specifically Title II, Section 615 et sec, as set forth in the materials, and to execute and submit any required documents to the Office of Administrative Law. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council. The board will now convene into closed session under Government Code Section 11126, sub C3, to discuss numbers 1 through 26 of the Victim Compensation Program. Okay, the board is reconvening into open session under Government Code Section 11126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 1 through 26 other than number 2 of the Victim Compensation Program?
I move
I
to
move-
approve. Go
oh.
ahead.
You can go.
I move to approve, reserving number 2, obviously, as discussed.
Second.
Council, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is consideration of approvals numbers 1 through 26 of the Victim Compensation Program with the exception of item 2. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is there any other business to come before the board? Okay, seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Council, please call the roll.
Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you back in March.
Thank you.